Chapter 2597. Shui Leihan pretended not to see it and continued, as for Chu Yang's other wife, you've seen her before. It's that Tai Butian who has the bearing of a ruler. Her cultivation is mediocre, about the same as Wu Qianqian's. She's probably too distracted to help Chu Yang and delayed her own cultivation. I really pity her talent, the Iceheart Emperor physique. That's a physique that can only appear in legends by chance and coincidence. Of course, even they themselves don't know about this. Iceheart Emperor physique. The Demon Empress said with difficulty, Shui Leihan, are you trying to kill me today? Do you have any more? Shui Leihan smiled. Look at you, didn't I tell you about the strength we have here? Isn't it better to be stronger? There's nothing left, except for one more important one. Are you sure you want to hear it? There's still something more important. The Demon Empress took a deep breath and calmed herself down. She said, go ahead, I'm sure I want to hear it. I can still hold on. Speaking of this, I have to praise your father's eyesight again. Chu Yang's other wife is the girl your son once chased madly. Zi Xieching. Shui Leihan said, that woman's current cultivation is definitely not inferior to Chu Yang and the rest. In other words, she's only a step away from us. That. I know about that. The Demon Empress said angrily, that's it. Leaving it for the last. There's no pressure at all. Finally, they managed to turn the tables at the last stage. You know? Shui Leihan looked at her with a half-smile. No, you don't know. What I really want to say is that this Zi Xieching is Zi Hao, the heavenly emperor of purple clouds. She's the biological daughter of Ling Piaoping, the goddess of purple clouds. You don't know about this, right? Your father's eyesight is really good, but why didn't he persist? If he persisted, why didn't he persist? Cough cough cough. Cough cough. Cough cough cough. The Demon Empress coughed violently, unable to contain the shock in her heart. Her emotions fluctuated greatly. You. What did you say? Cough cough cough. She was originally seriously injured, and although her injuries had healed, her state of mind was still unstable. At this moment, her state of mind was continuously affected, and she couldn't stop coughing for a while. Shui Leihan waited for her coughing to subside for a while before he said slowly, you didn't hear wrongly. I'm not wrong. The Demon Empress was stunned for a long time before she was overjoyed. So, Zi Xiao actually has a descendant. So it turns out that little sister Piaoping had left behind a descendant back then. Ha ha ha. Truly, the heavens do not destroy good people. Then, he came to a sudden realization. I was wondering why her demonic physique was so strange. So she's actually a descendant of the Purple Cloud Empire. No wonder. Sigh, that poor girl. I've suffered so much. Then, he sighed, it's a pity, that useless son of mine. Why didn't he persevere? He had already reached that point. Why didn't he persevere? If he had persevered a little longer, he might have. Sigh. I'm so pissed off. He thought about how his son had pursued her for so many years, but in the end, he still failed on the verge of success. The Demon Empress had the urge to grab Yarrow Ningning and beat him up. Imperial Mother. How are you today? At this moment, Yarrow Ningning excitedly rushed over to greet her. Lord Donghuang praised you again and again in front of me. Get your ass in here. The Demon Empress roared angrily. Yarrow Ningning was instantly confused. My performance during this period of time has been very good. I was even praised yesterday. Why is she speaking in such a tone today? Lord Donghuang praised me? Since he praised me, why is she still in such an attitude? What's going on? He walked in carefully with an apologetic smile on his face. Mother, what's wrong? What did Lord Donghuang say about me? Please don't take it seriously. The Demon Empress glared at him. When she heard what he said, she was even angrier. You have no judgment, no knowledge, no persistence. Useless, tactless, no IQ, no EQ little bastard. You're going to piss me off. She thought about her friendship with the heavenly emperor of Zi Xiao and her deep sisterhood with goddess Piaoping. The Demon Empress felt a sharp pain in her heart. If her good friend's daughter were to become her daughter-in-law, even if they were not of equal social status, she could at least take good care of her like her mother. Not only would she be a daughter-in-law, she would also be a daughter. But this dumb goose, never mind being a lackey, he actually couldn't even woo a girl. Her chance to do her best for her good friend disappeared for no reason. This was really intolerable. But Shui Leihan knew how to join in the fun and said, "I say, Demon Empress, how can you say the opposite? How can your husband be called lacking judgment, tactless, IQ? You're too humble. I think your husband is simply too perceptive, tactful, EQ, and IQ. Look at the friends he has made and the lover he has chosen. They're simply too promising." Yarrow Ningning, who saw everything in shock, was dumbfounded. What the hell is going on? Is Donghuang really praising me? But what's wrong with mother? He didn't understand what was going on at all. He smiled and said, "Mother, please don't be angry. You can beat me or scold me. It's just. The word bastard. Please don't be angry, don't be angry. Ah. Then there was a scream. However, before he could finish his words, the Demon Empress, who was at the critical juncture of adding fuel to the fire, flew into a rage out of humiliation and kicked a certain someone out. Shui Leihan laughed loudly, almost unable to straighten his back. This son of the Demon Empress was really the #1 living treasure in the world. He didn't let down all those praises just now. "You're really pissing me off." The Demon Empress was still upset, her anger still lingering. Just as she was angry, she saw Bai Shixian walk in and say softly, "Greetings, mother." The Demon Empress beamed and said, "Shixian is still the most sensible one. Seeing you makes me feel better." The Demon Empress was very satisfied with Bai Shixian. She had a good temper, a good personality, and good looks. As for her background, "I'm the Demon Emperor, why would I care about background? I just don't understand why you're angry." "What are you angry about?" "To be honest, I'm really envious of you for having such a good son." Shui Leihan said with genuine envy, "I've spent so much effort, but none of those little rascals in my family can be connected. But your son, on the other hand, has become sworn brothers with all these people. What kind of eyesight is this? What kind of knowledge is this? In the future, your Demon Emperor will have more than 13 or 14 peak-level experts with the cultivation of First Emperor as your backing. You can actually retire now, and you won't have any worries." When the Demon Empress heard Donghuang's words, her anger finally subsided. She felt that her son was indeed very perceptive and had a very high EQ and IQ. She pretended to be modest and laughed. "Ningning, this guy, what kind of perceptive and knowledge is this? It's just that fortune favors fools. But now that you've said this, I'm really relieved. Those few people, I can see that they're all people who really value relationships. They're very reliable." Shui Leihan smiled knowingly. After Bai Shixian left, Shui Leihan finally took a deep breath and said, "Xin, I have something to ask you." The Demon Empress was stunned. "What is it? Is it worth being so serious about?" Shui Leihan laughed and said, "That, Brother Demon King. I haven't seen him for hundreds of thousands of years. He is still recuperating? How are his injuries? Is there anything I can do to help?" The Demon Empress smiled sadly and bitterly. "Shui Leihan, what you're saying is really," she heaved a long sigh. "It's been announced to the outside world that he's still alive, but, with your knowledge, how could you not know that with his injuries back then, and with the king transfer ceremony, how could he still be alive?" Shui Leihan was stunned. "Ah, you mean, as early as 100,000 years ago?" The Demon Empress smiled bitterly. "He was already free, 100,000 years ago already." Shui Leihan was really stunned this time. For a long time, he didn't speak again. The Demon Empress looked into the distance, lost in thought. No one knew what she was thinking. After another long while, Shui Leihan said with difficulty, "Oh, this, I really don't know. This. I'm very sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about." The Demon Empress said indifferently, "Life and death are decided by fate, and riches and honor are decided by the heavens. It's not necessarily a bad thing for him to be free earlier. so that he won't get angry when he sees the world in chaos. Shui Leihan agreed. That's right, that's right. This world is really meaningless. The demon empress snorted and hugged her knees with both hands, silent. This. What I actually wanted to ask, Xin. Look, the battle against the heavenly demons is about to break out, and Chu Yang and the others are also finally growing up step by step. According to my speculation, we probably won't lose this battle. Shui Leihan said somewhat awkwardly, do you have any specific plans? The demon empress frowned. What specific plans? We'll just fight when the time comes. If there's any specific plans, it should be you, Shui Leihan. Hesitating isn't your style, is it? Shui Leihan rubbed his hands and smiled. It's like this. After the battle, you and I will have nothing to do. Our children have all grown up. After so many years, it's time for the Eastern Royal Heavens and Demon Emperor Heavens to change owners. When that time comes, do you have any other plans? The Demon Empress said softly, if that day really comes. After the battle against the heavenly demons, I'm still alive, and I pass the Demon Emperor position to Ningning, what will I do in the future? She sighed deeply, looking a little despondent. I really haven't thought about such a long-term thing. Chapter 2598. Hearing that, the Demon Empress was stunned. She looked at Dong Huang suspiciously. Shui Leihan, you're very strange today. What do you mean? Shui Leihan took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Finally, he said, it's like this. Cough cough, I've long found a paradise, isolated from the rest of the world. And I've prepared it for tens of thousands of years in advance. If I'm still alive after the war, I don't want to go any further. I just want to go in and enjoy life, leaving this world for the young people to play with. The Demon Empress frowned. This is a good plan. What's there that you can't say? It's time for us to enjoy life. Hearing that, Shui Leihan was overjoyed. You think so too? The Demon Empress was stunned again. Is there a problem with that? Halfway through her words, she suddenly realized something. So that was what he meant. It seemed that what she said just now was also ambiguous. Oh my God, thinking of that, she couldn't help but blush. Looking at Shui Leihan fiercely, she said, you don't have to say what you want to say next. Shui Leihan grinned. Ignoring the Demon Empress' murderous gaze, he actually said with a determined expression, what I'm actually saying is, if I'm the only one in there, it's also quite lonely. No matter what, there's still a lack of a mistress. I just don't know if you're willing to go in and enjoy life. Didn't you just say that it's time for us to enjoy life? Enjoy life. The Demon Empress' face turned redder and redder. She was already on the verge of exploding. Shui Leihan sighed deeply. This world is actually very lonely, get out. Before Dong Huang could finish, the Demon Empress had already exploded in anger out of humiliation. With a loud shout, there was a thunderous explosion. Boom. Dong Huang was kicked out in an extremely sorry state. He followed in the footsteps of a certain emperor. This kick was really heavy. The great Emperor Dong Huang flew out for an unknown distance just like that. Everyone in the Demon Palace was shocked at this scene. They were all stunned. Oh my God, Demon Empress. This is His Majesty Dong Huang. You sent him flying with a kick without giving him any face. Your injuries haven't healed yet. Is this the prelude to war? Most importantly, we don't seem to be able to defeat Dong Huang now. Oh my God. Immediately, everyone's hearts were in a mess, and they felt uneasy. Emperor Dong Huang stood up awkwardly and coughed twice. He actually walked away with his hands clasped behind his back as if nothing had happened, and from the looks of it, he seemed to be enjoying himself. Everyone fainted. What was going on? In the Demon Imperial Palace, the Demon Empress' face was flushed red. She gritted her teeth and said, that damned Shui Leihan, how dare he tease this empress right in front of me? How dare he? How dare he? Timpy. You actually dare to say that you're missing a mistress? You really don't have the slightest sincerity. Am I, Yarrow Shin such a loose person? The Demon Empress muttered angrily with a red face. After she finished speaking, She felt that her face was getting hotter and hotter. She actually stomped her feet like a little girl and returned to her dormitory like a gust of wind. So annoying, I'm going to ignore you. When Yaroshin was young, she was extremely beautiful. Together with Ling Piaoping and Shuexian they were known as the three great beauties of the Heaven Tower. Back then, he had prostrated himself before her. But many of them, back then, even Yuan Tianjie, Ziwu Ji, and the future Heavenly Emperor had fallen head over heels for her. Shui Leihan had also been moved by her. But Yaroshin had been engaged since she was young. They were childhood sweethearts, and their feelings for each other were very deep. So Shui Leihan retreated without a fight. Later, the Demon Empress married the Demon King, and Shui Leihan finally remarried. They had children and buried this relationship deep in their hearts. After each became the ruler of the world, the Eastern Royal Heaven and the Demon Emperor Heaven would be natural allies. And this time, when the Demon Empress was seriously injured, Shui Leihan rushed over from hundreds of thousands of miles away. The reason was obvious. But the Demon Empress had known about Shui Leihan's thoughts back then. But she didn't expect that after more than 1,000,000 years, this guy would actually bring up the old topic again, now. Shui Leihan's wife had already passed away for God knows how many years, and the Demon King had also been sleeping for 100,000 years. Bringing up the old topic again, she really didn't know, what would the result be? Big Western Heaven. Chu Yang and the Saint were still confronting each other. After the heavenly oath, there was no need to say anything anymore. The two sides were clearly in different positions, enemies of life and death. In this life, they would fight to the death. The calamity sword in Chu Yang's hand made a violent trembling sound. The murderous aura was like a storm coming, and the whole sky became heavy as if it was stagnant. Good. The saint's face was gloomy, and he suddenly looked up and sneered. Chu Yang, since you have such intentions, I shall fulfill your wish today. His face turned ferocious. I'll kill your brothers in front of you first, and I'd like to see how you will fight to the death with me. After saying that, he unsheathed his long sword and was about to attack. He was facing Jiyu Duxing and the others all along, and the distance was a little closer. However, Dong Wushang, Xie Danqiong, and the others didn't have the slightest bit of resistance. Cloudmaster, if you dare to attack, I'll really admire you. Chu Yang's cold voice sounded. Cloudmaster, do you really dare to attack now? From the corner of the saint's eyes, he suddenly realized that there were many more people behind him. Moreover, each of them had the aura of a saint at the pinnacle level. Moreover, their fierce killing intent was much stronger than an ordinary saint at the pinnacle level. Under the pressure of such an unprecedentedly intense aura, the saint realized that he actually couldn't move anymore. Once he moved, he would definitely attract a powerful attack like a thunderbolt. Slowly turning his head, he couldn't help but feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. He saw a row of people behind him. Luo Kedi, Sai Niang, Ji Mo, Rui Butong, Mo Qingwu, Chula and a masked Mo Tianji. If these people were to fight one-on-one, he wouldn't be afraid of any of them, and he could destroy them with a flip of his palm. Even if they all swarmed him, he wouldn't be afraid. Well, if it were normal times, he really wouldn't be afraid, and he would definitely be able to handle it with ease. But the problem was, he was seriously injured now. His greatest defensive trump card, the 100 doppelgangers, had all been used up. If he wanted to use them again, he would have to wait until his vitality recovered. And now, where would he have the time to do that? If he ferociously killed Dong Wushang and the others now, these people would definitely collectively fight to the death with him. If that really happened, his original physical body would probably be destroyed here without any accidents. The doppelgangers were gone, his cultivation was greatly damaged, and he was seriously injured. If his original body was also destroyed, that would be an unbearable blow. The most important thing was that even if he used another doppelganger to regenerate, there were many restrictions. Judging from the extent of his injuries today, he would probably never be able to return to the peak of his cultivation. The conclusion was, the losses outweighed the gains. Chu Yang and the others approached slowly. A semicircle formation surrounded the sage. Chu Yang looked over with a serious gaze. Master Yun, if you leave now, We have our concerns and won't rashly chase after you. Even if there is a huge feud, we will settle it in the future. Besides, there are only a few of us here, and no outsiders saw your ugly state. We are enemies to begin with. No matter how much we scold you, others may not believe us. It will damage your reputation. But if you really attack now, then, do you think you can withstand our combined attack in the current situation? Chu Yang's tone became heavier. He continued, just now, I believe you have already tasted the feeling of us brothers risking our lives. Are you really sure that your current body and cultivation can withstand it? Master Yun really didn't dare to be sure. On the contrary, he was very sure of something else. If he forced himself to attack now, at the same time that Jiyu Duxing and the others died, this body of his would also be smashed into powder in an instant. However, he really couldn't bear to give up this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to leave just like that. After all, whether it was Dong Wushang, Xie Danqiong, Mo Leiye or Jiyu Duxing, they were all his mortal enemies. They were all life-threatening dangers that could threaten his life. However, he saw Jiyu Duxing standing in front of him with his sword, as steady as a mountain. His gaze was cold. Are you really sure that I don't have the power to strike? Can I really succeed in one strike? The saint heaved a long sigh of relief and suddenly smiled. Chu Yang, do you really want me to leave? If I leave, I will miss the best opportunity to kill these 3 people today. But I can still kill them in the future, unless all of you stay together forever and don't give me a chance to kill you one by one. And all of you have the chance to destroy me today. If you miss today, you are destined to never have another chance. Chu Yang said calmly, even if there are 10,000 Cloud Masters, they can't compare to one toe of my brothers. The saint wasn't angry. He laughed and kept his sword. Suddenly, he rose into the air and said, since that's the case, then I'll leave. Everyone, let's meet again on the road to hell. His figure suddenly rose into the air. Seeing this, Luo Kedi and the others all heaved a sigh of relief. Only Chu Yang and Mo Tianji, although they seemed relieved on the surface, were secretly on guard. As expected, the saint had already risen thousands of feet into the air. Suddenly, he turned his hand and a terrifying force smashed down fiercely like a mountain. His targets were Jiyu Duxing, Xie Danqiong, Dong Wushang and Mo Leiye. The force of this palm had already completely condensed into substance. Like a sword, it broke through the space and came straight down. Very obviously, this was an attack that the saint had already prepared before he retreated. He was determined to get rid of those 4 troublemakers. And in order to do this, he had to take advantage of the moment when he pretended to leave and when Chu Yang and the others relax. As long as they relaxed a little, not only would Cloud Master be able to escape, but he would also be able to easily kill the 4 expert. Luo Kedi and Ji Mo were shocked when they saw this. But it was already too late for them to gather their energy and stop him. Despicable and shameless, Chu Yang scolded. The calamity sword that had been ready for a long time immediately attacked. At the same time, Mo Tianji's purple jade flute and Mo Qingwu's Qing Wu dream saber also attacked at the same time. Bang! Before the power of the palm could land, it had already been scattered in all directions. 3rd update, begging for monthly votes. There's a 4th update. I didn't expect to write a chapter on the plane to Beijing and another chapter on the high-speed train from Beijing to Tai'an. Haha, I'm amazing, right? Chapter 2599. The combined attack of Chu Yang, Mo Tianji and Mo Qingwu was probably stronger than the combined attack of Dong Wushang and the rest. It was not difficult for them to break the Saint Monarch's attack. Others might not have been prepared, but Chu Yang had long expected that the Saint Monarch would have such a move. Therefore, he dealt with it calmly. Mo Tianji had always been cautious and was also on guard. Mo Qingwu's mind was connected to Chu Yang's and was also on guard. No matter what, Cloud Lord's attack was destined to fail. Brotherly love is indeed deep. Ha 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 ha. Cloud Lord rose into the air and turned into a white cloud, disappearing into the distance. Chu Yang's sword flew into the air at lightning speed, but Cloud Lord was already far away. Chu Yang said quietly and seriously, "What do you know?" You're not even a fart. The white cloud in the air paused for a moment and finally disappeared into the distance. But that indignation remained in the air. How did you know that he would definitely attack? Ji-mo did not have time to attack. He was already drenched in cold sweat. Besides the lingering fear, he was full of admiration for Chu Yang and the rest. Despicable people are all like this. Mo Tianji was relieved and scolded jokingly, "Do you think everyone is as stupid as you?" With the Saint Monarch's departure, the crisis was finally over. First of all, Jiyu Duxing could finally breathe a sigh of relief. The power that he had forcefully mobilized just now immediately dissipated. All the foreign spiritual energy that he had absorbed did not really return to his body. It only supported him to be able to resist the Saint Monarch with his aura. However, when it came to actually making a move, he truly had the will but lacked the strength to do so. He was powerless. Jiyu Duxing still underestimated his own injuries and overestimated his tolerance. After being injured by the Saint Monarch's power of laws of heaven and earth, he could barely recover to his current state. He had already borrowed a lot of the light of that sudden new understanding from before. If not for his understanding of the power of earth and water, the current Jiyu Duxing would not have the ability to come here at all. He would most likely be lying on the ground like Bu Liuqing. In fact, at the last moment, he had forcefully resisted the Saint Monarch's murderous intent, causing his already heavy injuries to worsen. However, because Jiyu Duxing had made a breakthrough in his cultivation, and especially because Chu Yang was by his side, these injuries only needed some time to heal. He could still fully recover, and on the day he fully recovered, there would be another super strong opponent in this world who could pose a fatal threat to the only sage Lord Cloud. Oh right, there's still old Bu Liuqing. He's still at the bottom of the lake. Jiyu Duxing struggled to say this quickly. Xiedan Qiong was the other one who didn't seem right. Emperor Jasper Flower burst into laughter. Then, he suddenly burst into tears. My three great bodyguards. Xiedan Qiong was a gentle and refined man. But, he was crying so miserably at this moment. Everyone felt a burst of sadness in their hearts when they heard that he didn't care about his image or the dignity of the heavenly emperor. Haha. I've already prepared everything beforehand. When I return to Ink Cloud Sky this time, I'll start arranging for the few guards to spend their old age peacefully. Then, I'll build a family for them. To them, the long millions of years are simply too tiring. Xiedan Qiong cried like a child. The words are still ringing in my ears. But they're already gone. Chu Yang and the others remained silent. His heart was heavy. Strength. They were still not strong enough. If everyone's strength could be a little stronger, then, even if it was the same situation today, the sage would definitely not be able to escape. If Dong Wushang and the rest's strength improved, they might not even need their help to fight against the Sei. Strength. This was the difference in strength. Chu Yang, Mo Qingwu, Jiyu Duxing, Dong Wushang, Mo Lei Mo Tianji, Xiedan Qiong, Chula Ji-mo, Luo Kedi. They had obtained the strength of a total of 10 peak experts. If they improved further, their strength would be perfect. How could they not be able to hold back a sage? But now, they could only be cautious and watch him escape with their eyes wide open. From the moment the sage escaped, everyone clearly knew that this great battle that would engulf the entire Heaven Imperial Court was bound to start. It couldn't be avoided anymore. Both sides had already shed all pretenses of cordiality. It was obvious that there was no longer any room for negotiation. Everyone's hearts were very heavy. Although the arrival of this great battle had been in everyone's hearts for a long time, they never thought that it would start at such a time and place, under such circumstances and in such an atmosphere. Ji-mo flew out and looked for Bu Liuqing and Bu Laro according to Jiyu Miaoling's instructions. Luo Kedi went to clean up the corpses of the three great guards. Looking at the scattered flesh and blood, as well as the corpse of the 7 Stars Guard that was still in good condition. His eyes were still glaring angrily before he died. Everyone felt an indescribable pain in their hearts. The souls of those who died in the hands of the sage had already been shattered by the laws of heaven and earth. Everyone was a little angry. They were really unwilling to let the sage leave just like that. Although everyone knew that if they started the battle today, it would definitely be accompanied by casualties and even a large number of casualties, and this was a price that they couldn't afford. But after losing 3 peak experts, the murderer was still free and unfettered, and they couldn't do anything about it. This was still a very sullen matter. Since the beginning of the Heaven Imperial Court, when had they ever suffered such a loss? Everyone, calm down. We can't fight today. Mo Tianji hurriedly pacified everyone's indignation, but his tone was very unpleasant. You bunch of bastard. You only know how to fight. If we really fought today, Xiedan Qiong, Dong Wushong, Jiyu Duxing and the others would definitely die. Even if we killed the sage in the end, it would only be equivalent to killing a doppelganger. He could use the doppelganger to be reborn at any time. What's the point? How many times can we fight with him with such a small group of people? Mo Tianji's face was pale. Obviously, the consequences of the backlash from the heavenly mystery hadn't been completely eliminated. Although he had been recuperating in the heavenly mystery space for a short period of time, and his injuries had greatly improved, but overall, his body was still weak. And Mo Tianji was already extremely satisfied with this result. He was extremely rejoicing at this moment. In the heavenly mystery space, the situation of certain death had turned into the current situation. Although several of his brothers were seriously injured, their lives were not in danger. This was already a great blessing, a great blessing. In this life and death crisis, although his brothers were unharmed, 3 7-stars guards had still fallen because of it. Mo Tianji was also very sad about this. However, if those 3 hadn't used their lives to fight for a little more time, Xiedan Qiong and the others might not have been able to hold on until he and the others arrived. At this moment, the only thing that he and the others could do for them was to take revenge for them and completely annihilate the Sage Master Yun. This was the only way to comfort the souls of the heroes in the heavens. Found it, found it. Ji Mo cheered and rushed up from the lake, holding a person in his arms. That person was Biyu Liu Qing, who was still unconscious. Biyu Liu Qing's injuries were also very serious, almost as serious as Jiyu Duxing's. He had also overdrawn his life force. The only thing worth rejoicing about was that he wasn't injured by the sage's power of law like Jiyu Duxing. After that, he took a heavy pill and half a bottle of life spring water. Although these weren't enough to turn the situation around, they were enough to preserve his last bit of vitality and extend his life force. Now, he could hold on until reinforcements arrived. But on the other side, Xiedan Qiong, Dong Wushong and Mo Leiye had fainted. They had been holding on and not fainting because they were worried. But now, there was no need to hold on. Their brothers were right beside them. They could finally rest assured and faint. Jiyu Duxing was stronger than them. Although the spiritual energy that he had forcefully gathered was gradually dissipating, he sat down and circulated his energy. He was actually nursing his injuries and healing his body. And there was another person who wasn't in a good condition. Chu Yang took a few deep breaths and lost his balance, sitting on the ground. His face suddenly turned pale. Mo Tianji and the rest didn't know that there was another important reason why Chu Yang didn't choose to fight immediately. It was because his current condition was really not suitable for him to fight. If he forced himself to fight, not only could it cause the deaths of his brothers, it could even cause a complete collapse and defeat. So Chu Yang would rather use words to provoke the sage to leave. Previously, Chu Yang had continuously rushed to his limit and almost flew in a single breath. This had overdrawn his physical strength and he was already at his limit. When he was facing the sage, he was just forcefully putting up a defense. Even when he forcefully blocked the sage's attack just now, he actually suffered some internal injuries. It was just that he didn't dare to expose it. Now that the danger was over, he instantly felt that he couldn't hold on anymore. But Chu Yang still continued to force himself. He moved his body to the side of Jiyu Duxing and the rest to check on their injuries and confirm their condition. Duxing's physical condition is the best. There's basically nothing wrong with him anymore. He can totally heal himself. That's really impressive. Chu Yang was really surprised this time. Because there were obviously 2 more forces in Jiyu Duxing's body. Moreover, the direction of his cultivation seemed to be undergoing a very shocking change. To Jiyu Duxing, This kind of change was definitely a great thing. All along, Chu Yang had a kind of worry about Jiyu Duxing because Jiyu Duxing's character was like a sword, too sharp and too strong. Only when it was too strong would it be easy to break. In fact, Chu Yang had already made up his mind that when they met again, he would definitely explain this flaw to Jiyu Duxing and the way to change it. But now, this kind of cultivation technique that Jiyu Duxing had comprehended on his own was obviously more suitable for Jiyu Duxing himself. It was much better than the guidance that Chu Yang could give. At this point, Chu Yang was finally completely relieved. Jiyu Duxing had already found the path that was most suitable for him. I'm afraid I don't need to help with Duxing's injuries. Chu Yang heaved a sigh of relief. When he uses his new comprehension to completely eliminate the traces of the heavenly Tao's power of the great sage, he will be able to completely advance a step further. Under such circumstances, using his own martial power to heal himself, although it will take a little longer, there will be more benefits. The fifth update is 700 to 800 words short. It will be delivered later. Chapter 2600. As for Wu Shong, Danqiong, and Lei Ye's injuries, they are also fine. After checking on Dong Wu Shong and the other two, Chu Yang was even more relieved. Dong Wu Shong and the other two, although heavy, were not in critical condition. They only needed a super heavy pill to quickly recover. After feeding the medicine to the three, Chu Yang went to Bu Liu Qing. He couldn't help but frown. How is Elder Bu's condition now? Jiyu Miao Ling asked. Unlike Chu Yang and Jiyu Duxing, who were used to calling Bu Liu Qing Old Bu, Jiyu Miao Ling respectfully called Bu Liu Qing Elder Bu. Regarding this, Jiyu Duxing and Jiyu Miao Ling corrected each other for a long time. In any case, no one corrected the other, so they just let it be. Old Bu's condition is a little troublesome, but it's not a big problem. Chu Yang said, he doesn't have the comprehension of solo travel, and his life potential has been consumed too much. So, his injuries will definitely need a long time to heal, but he can still recover, no need to worry. In the following period of time, Chu Yang, Mo Tianji, and the others were adjusting their breathing and recovering, while Jimo, Luo Kudi, and the others were guarding with full concentration. Seeing the current situation, the two were glad that they didn't really fight just now. Among all the brothers, almost 5 people had lost the ability to fight, and there was also Mo Lei who was not inferior to their brothers. If they really fought, it would be unthinkable. It wasn't until night time that everyone gradually recovered. And the place where everyone was standing now had already changed to a safer place. What's the next step? Everyone looked at Mo Tianji, including Jiyu Duxing and the others who were gradually recovering. Who else should I ask if not you? The next step. Mo Tianji checked the news from Tianji Intelligence Department. He frowned again, seeming to have a difficult choice. For a moment, it was really difficult to make a choice. The whole world was in chaos. We can't be so exhausted like this. Otherwise, there's a big chance that the enemy will take advantage of us. Mo Tianji said, and now Saint Monarch is in the western sky. Saint Emperor Palace's main force is also mostly in the western sky. This situation is tantamount to giving us an opportunity. Xiedan Qiong needs to immediately return to Ink Sky to prepare for the upcoming battle, and do his best to suppress all opposition voices. Dong Wushang and Mo Lei could also return to the extreme heaven now. As for the others, they will stay here for the time being. Together with Jiyu Duxing, they will reorganize the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's old subordinates. Then, the storm will rise again. Yes. Wait a moment. Mo Tianji looked at the latest news that the Tianji Intelligence Department had sent over. Somewhat stunned, he said, the big western sky hasn't made any movements. Why? And the experts of the Saint Emperor Palace showed signs of moving towards the Demon Emperor Heaven? Why was this so? How could this be? According to the latest reports, Your Majesty Dong Huang. Right now, they are also in the Demon Emperor Heaven. If a Saint Monarch were to attack rashly, there wouldn't be much of a chance of victory. Mo Tianji couldn't help but scratch his head. How come I suddenly don't understand? That is indeed the case. Do you think that the sage will go to the Demon Emperor Heaven? Chu Yang pondered and said, No wonder the sage left this place yesterday. After that, they did not launch any more attacks. With his strength in the big western sky, if he wanted to launch a large-scale encirclement operation, it would not be difficult at all. It is even more reasonable. Previously, I was worried about this, but from beginning to end, no unforeseen event came. And on the Demon Emperor Heaven's side, since the Donghuang is also there, then, if the sage doesn't personally move, there would be no chance of victory. There was no chance of winning at all. Even if he went personally, he would still be able to win. Facing the Demon Empress at the same time, would he have a chance of victory? Mo Tianji said, "The sage will personally go, this is for sure. I was just thinking that after discovering the tyrannical strength that we have gathered, the sage not only did not deal with us, but also rushed to the Demon Emperor Heaven overnight. There must be a big scheme. I believe that there must be an even bigger scheme. Also, we speculate that the Demon Empress is in the same place, and her strength is greater than the sage's. But is this really the case? If the sage did not make sufficient preparations, how could he rashly make a move? Therefore, there must be another scheme. But what is this scheme in the end? I can't think of it." Mo Tianji thought hard. If I were the sage, then what method would I have to destroy the Demon Empress and the Eastern Emperor at the same time? In front of absolute strength, what kind of scheme would work? This question had always been bothering Mo Tianji. In the past, his opponents were the sage, and the sage was an existence with absolute strength. But now, his opponents were the Demon Empress and the Eastern Emperor, and this combination was even stronger than the sage. How could he defeat this combination? In the next few days, Mo Tianji kept thinking hard, but he had no clue. This made Mo Tianji feel really frustrated, so he kept thinking about this question. If I can't think of anything, it means that I'm not as good as the sage. How can that be? Under Chu Yang's meticulous treatment, Bu Liu Qing also woke up. As long as he woke up, he would be able to circulate his martial arts to heal himself, and the treatment would be greatly shortened. This was undoubtedly good news. The next day, Dong Wushong and Mo Lei, whose injuries were also greatly improved, took the heavy pills that Chu Yang gave them and immediately set off, returning to the extreme heaven. At the same time, Xiedan Qiong also returned to the ink cloud sky. Although the three of them had not fully recovered their strength, their movements were no longer hindered. As long as they circulated their martial arts along the way, their injuries would be completely healed. Before they left, Xiedan Qiong specially asked Mo Tianji to immediately inform him if there was any news. In terms of friendship with the Eastern Emperor, Chu Yang was naturally the most, followed by Xiedan Qiong. Xiedan Qiong had always been grateful to Shui Leihan for helping him that day in the ink cloud sky. This time, when he heard that the Eastern Emperor might be in danger, he was very concerned. If not for the fact that the ink cloud sky needed someone to keep watch, he simply wanted to rush over to the Demon Emperor Heaven to help. Xiedan Qiong was also not willing to owe anyone a favor. 3 days later, Jiu Du Xing used his own cultivation to completely suppress the law injury from the sage, and even his own strength had recovered by a small half. In addition to continuing to eliminate the hidden dangers, he also started to gather his old subordinates, and restore the vitality of the heavenly armament pavilion of the Western Heaven. With Chu Yang and the others giving advice and assistance, this operation proceeded extremely smoothly. Moreover, according to Mo Tianji's intention, he directly raised the banner of the solitary emperor on the mountain next to the battlefield. With this, he called for the troops to assemble and return. The solitary emperor has gathered his old subordinates. The people of the heavenly armament pavilion are rapidly returning. Any power that obstructs will be destroyed without a doubt. This absolutely shocking news quickly spread out. It spread throughout the entire Western Heaven, and its arrogant and domineering attitude was as clear as day. Faced with this kind of arrogant news that was practically tantamount to a public challenge, the Western Heaven officials quickly responded, sealing off the passage, and coming to this mountain to completely encircle and annihilate. But this time, this really provoked a hornet's nest. Jimo, Luo Kudi, Sai Niang, Chu Le, Mo Tianji, Mo Qingwu, Chu Yang, Rui Bu Tong, and the others repeatedly attack. This time, they acted. But they showed no mercy. This was completely a one-sided massacre. For half a month, all those who had previously obstructed the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's return were completely massacred, without exception. And those who had come to annihilate the Heavenly Armament Pavilion were similarly turned upside down, their corpses strewn across the wilderness, and their leaders often had their heads missing in the middle of the night for no reason at all. With these people's skills, they acted against those ordinary soldiers. It couldn't even be said to be a small display of a sledgehammer. This really was too much of a bully. In the heavily besieged area of the Big Western Heaven, Jiu Du Xing's Heavenly Armament Pavilion, which had been scattered, quickly recovered. It expanded like a rolling snowball. The troops that had been scattered returned from all directions. The solitary emperor returned. This was undoubtedly a shocking and intimidating news to the entire Western Heaven. For the Big Western Heaven's Heavenly Armament Pavilion, this was even more incomparably exciting news. Every surviving member of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion was like someone who'd taken drugs, howling as they broke through the blockade and rushed over. Jimo, Luo Kudi, and Rui Bu Tong split up to attack, sometimes directly charging thousands of li, and one road after another was dug out. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion's troops and horses came in an unending stream. In half a month's time, the heavily besieged area was like a miracle, gathering 3 million troops and horses. This kind of number was simply a miracle, a legend, a myth. In this period of time, Jiu Du Xing's injuries were getting better and better. On the 10th day, Jiu Du Xing successfully used the energy of the earth to completely eliminate the damage caused by the Saint Monarch Law. Next, he naturally started to fully recover, and this time's recovery speed was simply appalling. In just one short day's time, he'd already recovered 1/3 of his cultivation. Witnessing this kind of recovery speed with his own eyes made Chu Yang somewhat speechless. This was because this was completely the recovery of one's own strength. In the process, he didn't take any heavy pills or other heavenly treasures to recover with the help of medicine. The huge amount of underground vital energy was absorbed by Jiu Du Xing without any resistance, turning it into his own. Regarding this kind of situation, Mad Sword Heaven and Earth Wu Yequang was hopping mad in the air, but there was nothing he could do. Because, no matter who it was, even if the Saint Monarch was here right now, there was absolutely nothing he could do. Because Jiu Du Xing's side had gathered experts, and there were no less than 10 Heavenly Emperor level expert. It was almost the same as having all the Heavenly Emperors here. This kind of luxurious lineup, who could resist? The most frightening thing was, the Saint Monarch had hurriedly left before this, and had even taken away the majority of the Saint Emperor's Palace's experts. This was taking drastic measures to deal with the problem. Wu Yequang even suspected that if he rashly appeared, he would be surrounded and beaten on the spot, and directly broken into pieces. For an entire half-month, there was no news from the Saint Monarch's side. This situation made Mo Tianji very anxious. Xiedan Qiong's side had already asked a few times, but even with the intelligence network of the Tianji Intelligence Department, there was actually no new news about the Saint Monarch's movements. This made everyone feel that there was a huge conspiracy brewing, and it could explode at any time. On the day that Jiu Du Xing's injuries were completely healed, Bu Liu Qing's injuries were also half-healed. Although Bu Liu Qing had exhausted his own life's potential previously, with an unlimited supply of the Spring of Life and 2 heavy pills, not only was his potential replenished, it even increased. Then, a very surprising piece of news finally broke out. The elf race, which had always existed in the Demon Emperor Heaven and had always been fighting wars of words, had actually gone to war. And it was a direct battle with the Demon Emperor Heaven, and they had even started a war with the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, which was presided over by the Demon Emperor Tianzi Xieqing. This news made everyone so shocked that they were petrified. Advertisement again. Warmly recommending our good friend, Master Moongate's new historical book, Night Sky. Just by looking at the title of this book, I feel as if I've seen a peerless overlord hiding in the dark, controlling the world. From the bottom of my heart, I believe that this book will definitely not disappoint us. I've already collected it. Everyone should also collect it. This new book is difficult, everyone should support it. Many thanks. Transportation Portal. Chapter 2601. The elf race was a race that drifted outside the sphere of influence of the celestial emperor. They had always loved peace and stood aloof from worldly affairs. If not for the invasion of the extraterrestrial demons this time, the elf race would probably not even appear in the mortal world. But this time, they were going to war against the demon emperor heaven. There was definitely something fishy about this, and an extremely fishy one at that. After Caie heard this news, Mo Tianji was finally able to confirm what the saint had done. He immediately urged Chu Yang to personally rush to the demon emperor heaven to provide assistance. After a series of discussions, Chu Yang left behind Ji Mo and Luo Ku Di to assist Jiu Du Xing in overseeing the big western sky to continue the battle with the crazed sword heavenly emperor. He wanted to seize this side's heavenly emperor position as soon as possible. As for himself and Mo Tianji, they took the rest of the people and hurriedly returned all the way, hurrying to the demon emperor heaven. Chu Yang had already realized, this time, it would probably be a decisive moment. The battle of the demon emperor heaven was the moment that would ultimately decide the direction of everything. The time left for them was probably not much, and the time left for the saint was similarly not much either. At this moment, the demon emperor heaven had sunk into an unprecedented chaos. Zi Xieching presided over the heavenly armament pavilion, and the real pressure in this period of time had multiplied. The combined pressure of the Saint Emperor Palace and the elf race made Zi Xieching feel somewhat breathless. Zi Xieching was extremely puzzled by this and was even more puzzled. The elf race had always loved peace and stood aloof from worldly affairs. Although they were arrogant to the point of making people uncomfortable, they were a genuinely kind race. Why would they suddenly intervene at this time? Moreover, they took the initiative to attack the allied forces of the Eastern Royal Sky and the Demon Emperor Heaven. The spearhead was even directed at the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. This was equivalent to declaring war on the three largest forces of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, excluding the Saint. This was really too unwise. No matter which angle you looked at it from, it did not make sense. This matter really made her unable to understand no matter how she thought about it. But this extremely strange matter had already happened. Regarding this established fact, they could only raise their spirits and deal with it with all their might. The key was to deal with this great enemy. It was true that the elves were a kind race, but their combat power was also true. They were very sharp, and they had the right to be arrogant. Other than having a lot of high-end combat power, they also had another characteristic, which was that they were all soldiers. Any elf, even the most ordinary elf, had the strength of earth rank or above. With such a foundation of strength, they indeed had the qualifications to look down on all living beings. In the face of such an enemy, even Donghuang Shueleihan, Demon Empress Yarou Xin and the current Zi Xieching would have to be wary and fearful. Also, because of the elf race's strong interference, the situation between the Demon Emperor Sky and the Saint Lord's forces had changed greatly. Previously, in the Demon Emperor Sky's territory, even though the Saint Lord was the ruler of the world in name, he couldn't extend his hand so far. Therefore, he could only harass a small area and then assassinate a small area. Although this situation had caused considerable trouble for the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, everyone was still able to cope with it. After all, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion in the Demon Emperor Sky was full of experts. In terms of actual strength, although it was still inferior to the Saint Emperor Palace of the Saint Lord, it was not inferior to the Heavenly Court. Especially, there was the existence of the divine soul of Calamity and Brother Tiger, who could come and go without a trace. Against the experts of the Saint Lord's side, they were simply the best. Silently, more than half of the trouble was dealt with. Who would know that there would be a cloud of fog floating behind them when they were hiding well? And that cloud of fog was actually a killer. Who would notice that a kitten suddenly appeared in front of them? And this harmless kitten actually swallowed the entire forest that they were hiding in when it opened its mouth. By then, it would really be. Their screams could only be in the kitten's stomach. Therefore, Zi Xieching wasn't afraid of the high-end combat power of the Saint Lord's side at all. Although there would be a small loss, it was completely bearable. As for the army, it was under the control of Meng Wuya and the Chrysanthemum Saber King, Li Guanyu. It was basically flawless. But this time, The elf race had come out and declared war. They even went to the extent of fighting, which caused everyone to have a headache. The elf race had never done evil. Although they were a little too obsessed with cleanliness and were arrogant and conceited, these had nothing to do with others. And their combat power was extremely strong. Every person they assassinated was a top-notch expert. It was a pity to kill such a team. Not only did they feel uncomfortable, but it also affected the combat power of the Heavenly Imperial Court. After all, the elf race had only appeared because of the extraterrestrial demons. Their original intention was very clear and very obvious, which was to resist the extraterrestrial demons. Such a team with such strength, not to mention the fact that the opponent was extremely strong and difficult to deal with, even if they could kill them directly, it would be an extremely pity. But the most serious problem now was that even if you wanted to be merciful and not kill the opponent would kill you without mercy. Even though they knew that there must be some kind of misunderstanding, they couldn't find any opportunity to explain in such a short time. This situation was undoubtedly extremely depressing. Why did the elf race suddenly intervene in this battle? Zhi Xieching frowned. Has the divine soul returned? Everyone looked at each other. When the matter had just worsened, the divine soul carried the heavy responsibility of sneaking into the elf race to investigate. But until now, he had not returned. If this matter was not investigated clearly, they couldn't determine a strategy to deal with him. To deal with such an unexpected strong enemy, facing him head-on was undoubtedly the worst strategy. The battle is dangerous now. Intelligence is the most important thing. Why is he not back yet? Zhi Xieching grabbed Brother Tiger's kitten-shaped neck and lifted it up, savaging it fiercely. Brother Tiger screamed twice but couldn't break free. In an instant, its fur was messed up and its eyes were full of innocence. Sister, what has it got to do with me that he isn't back? Why do you torment me every time you throw a tantrum? Do you really treat me as a pet? But how could it know that if a girl had a pet by her side, then no matter what happened, good or bad, she would always like to torment it like this? Although Brother Tiger admitted that he was not a pet, in the eyes of a certain queen, how was he different from a pet? Ask him to come and see me as soon as he comes back, Zhi Xieching said. Then, she rubbed the fur on Brother Tiger's head fiercely and turned to leave. Brother Tiger was left with a helpless expression. Heavens, save me. Can you not torture me like this in the future? I'm not a pet, I'm really not. Perhaps the heavens really responded to a certain cat's cry. In the middle of the night, the soul of the calamity finally returned. After some communication, Zhi Xieching let out a long sigh. She finally knew what was going on with the strange changes in front of her. The elf race had a wish, which was to lead the humans in the Heaven Imperial Court to fight against the extraterrestrial demons. In other words, it was our duty to participate in the war. However, the noble elf race would definitely not listen to the command of any other race. Other races had no right to command the noble elf race. However, if the noble elf race lowered their status to command other races, the amiable elf race wouldn't mind. None of the forces in the Heaven Imperial Court had expressed their approval for such a meaningless statement. Therefore, the situation was at a stalemate all the way. This time, when the Demon Empress returned with serious injuries, the elf race sent people to express their concern out of goodwill. They even sent over some healing panacea. Their intention was, "We have shown great goodwill. Once you are healed, we can have a good talk." However, this matter was ruined by Xue Leihan. Xue Leihan came from hundreds of thousands of miles away just to please her. How could he be willing to let the elf race take the initiative? Therefore, he gave a resolute rejection. Moreover, with East Sovereign's appearance, why would the experts in the Demon Palace care about the elf race's medicine? The Demon Empress herself was in seclusion to heal her injuries and didn't know what was going on outside. Therefore, under East Sovereign's insistence, the two elders sent by the elf race to please her were driven back. Their attitude was very firm. Speaking of which, East Sovereign was indeed wrong in this matter. However, as a celestial emperor, he had long been used to following his words and following his own will. He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. Moreover, It concerned his lifelong happiness and the most beautiful youth. Why would he care about the elf race? However, this planted a hidden danger in this matter. The elf race hit a nail on the head. Their warm face was stuck on a cold face. They, who had always been arrogant, were naturally so angry that they were about to explode. He actually dared to blaspheme the elf race's goodwill and good intentions. This matter definitely wasn't over. Therefore, they planned to take revenge. However, facing someone as strong as Shwe, who was recognized as the second strongest person in the Heavenly Imperial Court, the elf race still couldn't come up with a good idea after many days of discussion. At this critical juncture, the saint who heard this good news instantly realized that this was an excellent opportunity. Therefore, he rushed over overnight. He requested to see the elf god of archery. The elven archer god was the pinnacle of the continent and the #1 assassin in the imperial court. He had never put anyone in his eyes. Even the #1 assassin in the world, Holy Monarch Solipsism, only received the 2 words, "I won't see you." However, the saint only used one sentence to change the elf god of archery's original intention and even changed the attitude of the entire elf race. "I know the whereabouts of your elf emperor's seal." It was this sentence that made all the elves a little impatient. The elf god of archery almost immediately decided to meet him. The elf emperor's seal. That was the most precious thing of the elf race. Since hundreds of thousands of years ago, the elf empress suddenly said that she wanted to go out for a walk and disappeared without a trace. As for the elf emperor's seal that never left the elf empress's body, its whereabouts were also unknown. The disappearance of the elf empress caused the elf race to lose a super expert who could compete for the position of the Heavenly Imperial Court. Naturally, it was a pity. However, the loss of the elf emperor's seal had far-reaching consequences. Because the elf emperor's seal was not only the symbol of the elf race's imperial power, it also contained the extreme desire to become the elf emperor. This unforeseen event caused the elf race to suffer a great loss. Chapter 2602. Although the elves had a deep foundation and still had many experts, the legendary creator of the elves, the elf emperor, had never been born again. At the same time, the royal bloodline of the elves had been cut off. The most precious spring of life of the elves had also turned from a large lake to a deep well. It seemed that it was about to dry up. This result undoubtedly announced that the elves had fallen into a terrible situation without a leader. If it wasn't for the other undying legend of the elves, the elf archer god, coming back with his earth-shattering cultivation, the elves would have been torn apart for a long time. This showed the importance of the elf emperor's seal to the elves. Now, the sage actually said that he knew the whereabouts of the elf emperor's seal. How could he not be excited? How could he refuse the sage's olive branch? "May I ask your majesty the sage, where is the elf emperor's seal?" The elf archer god looked at the sage with bright eyes. "Please tell me." Even though countless years had passed, the elf archer god, as the head of the 4 gods of the elves, still looked the same. He had the demeanor of an elegant gentleman and a handsome young man in a chaotic world. However, everyone who was familiar with him knew that the appearance of the elf archer god was purely an illusion. Once the battle started, he would definitely have another appearance. He would disappear without a trace, and wherever he went, there would be corpses everywhere. The elf archer god's most glorious achievement was because a human saint expert had offended the elves. Many elves had surrounded and suppressed him, and the elf archer god finally attacked in anger. At that time, everyone was paying attention to that battle and looking forward to it. However, until the end. Even when that expert died, no one knew when the archer god had made his move. Even more, no one knew if the elf archer god had attacked. Or perhaps, the only person who had sensed the elf archer god's attack. Only the person who was at the peak of the human race, the moment before he died, that instant. In that battle, the elf archer gods might shook the world. That arrow came without a shadow and left without a trace. The moment the arrow flashed, everything was already over. The elf archer god lived up to his name, because he had created a legend. In a battle between experts of the same level, he would use the most thorough method to defeat the opponent. Even when the opponent died, they wouldn't know his position, his moves, and everything about him. Actually, when it comes to the specific whereabouts of the Elven Emperor's seal, I really don't know. The sage's words caused the divine arrow eyes expression to suddenly become extremely fierce. He hurriedly continued, however, I do know the reason why the Empress left Heaven's imperial court to seek refuge in a foreign land. Archer God frowned. Oh. Obviously, he was very surprised by the sage's answer. His entire elf race didn't know why the queen had left, but he, an outsider, actually knew. Naturally, he was rather suspicious. Even if you're a saint, you shouldn't be so resourceful to this extent. The sage had a smile on his face as he looked at him. It was as if he had a card up his sleeve and wasn't afraid that he wouldn't believe him. Archer God let out a sigh of relief. With a serious expression, he said, Please enlighten me. For the elves, this was already a step from arrogance to deference. And the reason why the sage had said such words was because he wanted this face. This was the opportunity to be on equal footing, and even the qualifications to take the initiative. It was just a slight change. Both sides were well aware of it. Because of this important information in his hands, Archer God didn't mind giving him this face. After all, the whereabouts of the Empress, the cause, and the result, especially the Queen's whereabouts, were all related to whether or not they could find the whereabouts of the Elven Emperor's seal. This was the most crucial point, because if the Elven Emperor's seal could be found, it would be a huge matter for the elf race. As for face and what not, hey, only you humans care about these illusory things. Ari, this matter is a matter of regret for the aristocrats, but it's even more of a scandal for the human race. For a moment, I don't know what to say. How could the sage, who had gained the upper hand, not deliberately be mystifying? Unexpectedly, he started to groan and groan. If your majesty wants to say it, then say it. If you don't know what to say, then there's no need to say it. Please go ahead. The elven archer god didn't fall for the sage's trick. Although he was anxious to know the whereabouts of the Elven Empress and the Elven Emperor's seal, he wouldn't let the sage completely take the initiative. Between his words, there wasn't the slightest bit of politeness. Your Excellency Archer God, don't be impatient. This matter indeed needs to be explained slowly. If I don't clearly explain the cause and effect of this matter, I'm afraid that Your Excellency won't necessarily believe in my words. The sage faintly smiled and still spoke unhurriedly. After all, although we've been friends for a long time, today is the first time we've met. All right, then you can slowly explain it. The elven archer god snorted and said, Your Excellency Archer God, the matter of the aristocratic queen's disappearance is actually related to two other important figures, as well as two of my deceased old friends. If it wasn't for the urgency of today's situation, I wouldn't have wanted to mention this matter of the past. The sage's expression was sorrowful. Are you going to say it or not? If you don't want to say it, then you can leave. The elven archer god was furious and his attitude became more and more impatient. This guy is rambling. Don't tell me that he doesn't know anything. Just to trick me. Do you think I'm stupid? Your Excellency, this matter really involves many of the top experts of our two races. I have no choice but to speak carefully. In fact, this matter is of great importance. The sage's expression was extremely serious. I know. Hurry up and tell me the truth. The elven archer god forcefully suppressed his anger and said. He thought to himself, is there really some important secret? Other than the aristocratic queen, this matter also involves the three celestial emperors of the celestial imperial court and two other peerless beauties. The sage said slowly. Ah. What relationship does the queen of my race have with the human celestial emperors? Your Majesty, don't deliberately exaggerate the matter and deliberately mystify it. The elven archer god's heart was moved, but his mouth didn't show any weakness. Sigh, the three celestial emperors I mentioned just now include me. Those three celestial emperors are Donghuang Shui Leihan, Demon Emperor Yaro Sangza, Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor Zihao, and the current Demon Empress Yaro Xin Er. Back then, the beauty of the country, Goddess Piaoping, Ling Piaoping. The sage sighed heavily. The elven archer god was instantly speechless. What did you say? You mentioned a total of 5 people, and 3 of them have already passed away. Your Majesty, can you be more exaggerated? The sage said seriously, other than the whereabouts of the aristocratic queen, there's also a shocking conspiracy that spanned over millions of years. Stop talking nonsense, hurry up and tell me. My patience has already been worn out by you. The elven archer god was finally about to explode. The sage heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly continued. All right, the mastermind of this conspiracy is that Donghuang Shuelehan. This person looks dignified on the surface, but in reality, he's despicable and despicable. He's unscrupulous and despicable. He's unscrupulous and despicable. Back then, the fall of the Demon Emperor and Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor was caused by this thief. Stop, please stop. The elven archer god's face was filled with disdain. Although the elven race is isolated from the rest of the world, it's not that they don't know anything about the outside world. Not to mention that the Demon Emperor announced to the outside world that the Demon Emperor Yarrow Sangza went into seclusion to recuperate due to an unforeseen event. It's still unknown whether he's really fallen or not. That Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor Zihao and Donghuang Shuelehan were close friends. Back then, when the Heavenly Devil race invaded, Zihao gathered all the forces of the Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor and fought to the death. What a hero. Instead, it's you. In that incident, wasn't it a little shady? The elven archer god didn't hide his meaning at all. We've never heard of any discord between Zihao and Shuelehan. Instead, it's rumored that you've done something very unscrupulous and despicable in this matter. No, the world is blinded by a temporary illusion. The real situation that day was that I was going to lead an army to assist the Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor to fight against the Heavenly Devil together. Shuelehan used seclusion as an excuse to secretly stop me from sending troops. Shuelehan was the biggest mastermind behind the fall of Zihao and the fall of the Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor. Even after the fall of the Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor, he personally went to the Saint Emperor Palace to reason with me, but it was just to cover the eyes of the world. The sage spoke fervently, as if he was telling the truth. All right, I understand. Donghuang is actually a despicable person. But no matter how despicable he is, it has nothing to do with the elven race. We're only concerned about the whereabouts of the Empress, the elven archer god said impatiently. His voice already had a perfunctory tone, and his expression had also become completely indifferent. Archer god, you may not know this, but the Demon Emperor Yarrow 33 has already fallen. The fall of the 2 celestial emperors was not only related to Shuelehan, but also to beauty. Haha, does your majesty mean that Donghuang Shuelehan coveted the beauty of the demon empress Yarrow Xin and the queen of the Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor Ling Piaoping, so he caused the death of the 2 celestial emperors? The archer god laughed mockingly. Haha, this is really funny. Yes, this is the truth. Brother archer god, you're indeed wise. Facing the archer god's mockery, the sage actually admitted it. This made the archer god a little stunned. Damn it, how could he be so shameless? Was this still the sage? The sage sighed and said that Shuelehan is indeed a lecherous ghost, and the women he hunted, other than having peerless beauty, must also have top-notch cultivation and outstanding temperament. The demon empress Yarrow Xin and the queen of the Purple Cloud Celestial Emperor Ling Piaoping both met his requirements, and this was also the biggest reason why he schemed against the 2 celestial emperor. Now, he's in a heated relationship with the demon empress Yarrow Xin and is even forcefully suppressing the aristocratic envoys. How could there be no cause for this? All right, your majesty, I'll repeat it one last time. What you've said, whether it's true or not, it's all matters of the human race in the heavenly court, and has nothing to do with us elves. If this is the information you're referring to, you don't have to continue. The elf archer god's patience had obviously reached its limit, and he didn't want to deal with it anymore. Haha, elf archer god, you still haven't realized where the problem lies. Back then, the aristocratic empress was also one of Shuelehan's targets, and as far as I know, what's even more unfortunate is that the aristocratic empress fell deeply in love with that despicable Shuelehan. The sage's words really gave the archer god a shock. Chapter 2603. What? There's such a thing. How is this possible? How could Her Majesty fall in love with Shwelehan? The god of archery frowned in disbelief. There's no falsehood in this. The saint sighed. Ever since Shwelehan stopped me from sending troops to Purple Cloud Heavens, I was shocked to find out that he could treat his sworn brother in this way. How could I not be vigilant? Hence, I paid attention to all his actions. By chance, I found out about many old matters. Please continue. The god of archery frowned. Speaking of which, Her Majesty had no choice but to leave. Because Her Majesty was already pregnant with Shwelehan's child. So, the saint shook his head and sighed. It's a pity that such a peerless beauty. Continue. The god of archery frowned deeply and said. Her Majesty went to look for Shwelehan, hoping that this matter could be resolved. Actually, if it could be resolved, it would be a grand occasion for our two races. But Shwelehan refused to take responsibility. Besides, Her Majesty also accidentally discovered the affair between Shwelehan and the Demon Empress. The Demon Emperor Yarrow 33 was also harmed by that adulterous couple. At that time, the saint's face was full of pain. Ah, there's such a thing. Are you serious? The god of archery was so shocked that his eyes turned completely green as he looked at the saint. But he was thinking about the possibility of this matter. Could the saint be lying? This matter was too unbelievable. It was just that, he remembered that when Her Majesty was talking about the Emperor and the Empress, the person she admired the most was indeed Donghuang Shwelehan. And this admiration was not concealed in her words. When the Empress was out traveling, she seemed to have met Shwelehan a few times. If she had a good impression of Donghuang, there was no doubt about it. But to say that she fell in love with Shwelehan and had an unusual relationship with him, that was a little unlikely. Not to mention that she was pregnant with his armor and discovered that the Demon Empress had murdered the previous Demon Emperor due to her affair being exposed. It was even more unbelievable. However, these words had come from the mouth of the saint before him, and this added a bit of credibility to it. The Emperor and the Empress were the only ones. The saint was the #1 person in the heavenly imperial court. Would such a person speak without thinking? The most important thing was that the timing was actually very similar. The archer god was 30% convinced and 70% doubtful as he stared at the sage. His complexion had already turned somewhat unsightly. Your Majesty the Lord Saint, where did you hear this from? The sage faintly smiled and said, I knew that you wouldn't believe me. Originally, I wanted to speak slowly, but Your Excellency's patience isn't very good. I only want to finish speaking in one breath. Naturally, there are some things that I did not say in detail. Please listen to me slowly. The archer god snorted. The saint said, back then, when the Demon Emperor was fighting for the position of the Heavenly Emperor of the Demon Emperor Heaven, he was severely injured and went into seclusion to recover. It took him hundreds of thousands of years to recover. The Demon Empress, Yarrow Shin-er, stayed alone in an empty room and felt lonely. In the past, she had a predestined marriage with Shwelehan, and in the end, she hooked up with him. Thereafter, Her Majesty, the Empress, happened to stumble upon this adulterous affair at that time. The conflict alarmed the Demon Emperor who was in seclusion. The Demon Emperor was filled with anger and was determined to kill the two of them. However, because he forced himself out of seclusion, his cultivation was greatly reduced and he died in the hands of the adulterous couple. If the Demon Emperor hadn't risked his life to send the Empress away that day, I'm afraid that the Empress would have really died a long time ago. The saint shook his head and sighed. To be honest, if it wasn't for the fact that the incident that day was reported to me by my closest confidant, I really wouldn't dare to believe that the two of them were actually such people and could actually do such a thing. The archer god didn't speak. At that time, Shwelehan issued the Eastern Royal Hunting Order to kill Shwewuhan. I believe that Lord Archer God must be familiar with this matter, right? The saint said calmly. The Archer God's face suddenly became unusually ugly. The Eastern Royal Hunting Order to kill Shwewuhan. This matter was indeed initiated by Shwelehan. According to the official statement, it was to kill an evil killer called Shwewuhan. In the end, This killer also died in the hands of the Eastern Royal Heaven. However, the time when this incident happened was almost the same as the time when the Elven Empress went missing. It could be said that it was completely consistent. If we only judge from the time and the matter of the Demon Empress, there's no evidence. However, there's another thing that you definitely don't know that can be used as evidence. In fact, that Xue Wuhan is blood contract. And blood contract is Donghuang Xue Leihan's biological younger brother. Until now, he's still alive. The saint had a self-mocking expression and said lightly, "Then who was the one being hunted down back then? And who could actually make the Eastern Royal Heaven personally take action?" The archer god's face turned pale. He took a deep breath and still didn't say anything. This matter was really too big. He really couldn't react at all. And at that time, the Demon Empress of the Demon Emperor Heaven also spread the news that she was traveling in the Eastern Royal Heaven. She decided to participate in the hunt for Xue Wuhan and get rid of this disaster for the imperial court. The saint sneered. "What a coincidence, isn't it?" The archer god also sneered. If the ratio of belief and suspicion was 30 to 70 just now, it was still 30 to 70 now, just that the order was reversed. After that, Xue Wuhan indeed died. How could two of the strongest experts in the world not die? Faced with such combat power, even I may not be able to survive. The saint continued to sneer. After that incident, the Demon Empress returned to the Demon Emperor Heaven on her own, while Xue Leihan went missing for a period of time. And it was during that period of time that your Empress disappeared completely, without any follow-up news. The sage chuckled. So I said, although I don't know the exact whereabouts of the Fairy Emperor's seal, Xue Leihan definitely knows. The sage faintly smiled. Such a disgraceful thing happened between two experts who disdained the world. Even if it was me, I'd still want to silence them. As far as I know, Donghuang Xue Leihan is now in the Demon Emperor Heaven, accompanying the Demon Empress, Yarou Xin Er. The saint said, and that Chu Yang from the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. The saint smiled mysteriously. What about that Chu Yang? The elf archer god didn't know Chu Yang's background. At most, he only knew that there was such a person. But now, hearing the saint's mysterious tone, he couldn't help but ask. That Chu Yang? The saint sneered. Actually, he is the illegitimate son of Xue Leihan and the Demon Empress. Can you understand the situation now? So that's the truth. The archer god was enlightened. It was only now that he completely believed it. It was no wonder that Donghuang Xue Leihan had supported Chu Yang when he was still weak. The Demon Emperor Heaven had also supported Chu Yang's Heavenly Armament Pavilion without any reason. They had even gone against the Saint Emperor Palace's forces for Chu Yang. It was reasonable that Chu Yang's Heavenly Armament Pavilion could rise so quickly in the Demon Emperor Heaven. No wonder the Donghuang came after the Demon Empress was injured. No wonder when the Saint Emperor Palace announced the annihilation of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, a purely civilian organization, Xue Leihan's Eastern Royal Heaven immediately opposed it. He had found the reason for all of this. He had found the root cause. Chu Yang was the illegitimate son of the Donghuang and the Demon Empress. This reason was enough to dispel all the fog in front of him. With this premise, everything became logical. This answer was simply too perfect. With this premise, it was not impossible that Xue Leihan and the Demon Empress conspired to kill the Fairy Empress. In fact, it was very possible. If the archer god's belief and suspicion was 70 to 30% before, now it was 100%. Since the Demon Empress and the Donghuang had already colluded, wouldn't it be logical for them to have an illegitimate son? As for the fact that no one knew that the Demon Empress was pregnant, there was no need to explain. Experts of this level could go into seclusion for more than 10 years, dozens of years, hundreds of years, or even thousands of years. Not to mention one child, even 30 to 50 children would not be a problem. Moreover, with the strength and influence of these two people, if they wanted to nurture an outstanding illegitimate son, as long as this illegitimate son's talent was not too bad, it would be as easy as flipping one's hand. This exception was too obvious, too obvious. And the Saint Emperor Palace is now fighting in the Demon Emperor sky. Their position is very awkward. If I were to reveal the truth to Tian Qiu, it would inevitably cause an even greater tragedy. Right now, 70% of Tian Qiu has already been invaded by the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. In addition to the Eastern Royal Sky and Demon Emperor Sky that have not been invaded in name, even this sovereign feels that his strength is beyond his ability. The sage said sincerely, "Therefore, I have come this time to expose other people's secrets. My methods are undoubtedly not honorable, and I also have some thoughts of my own. I hope that I can obtain the assistance of the fairy race." This little thought naturally cannot be concealed from Brother God of Archery. However, my overall view is still focused on the safety of the Heavenly Imperial Court. This point can be shown to the sun and moon, and the heavens will pity me. The sage's words were truly spoken openly and sincerely. He confided in Chu Li with all his heart, and was extremely sincere. The archer god nodded, thinking, "If I can't see through your true intentions, then I have lived for more than 1,000,000 years in vain. As the saying goes, the enemy of our enemy is our ally." The saint said righteously, "For the peace of the imperial court, for the common people, for the future of the fairy race's bloodline, for the supreme glory of the fairy race, I think we should form an alliance." The saint said honestly, "Together, we will deal with the Eastern Emperor and the Demon Empress, these two powerful enemies at the peak. And if we want to achieve each other's goals, the best entry point is Chu Yang or his Heavenly Armament Pavilion." The archer god nodded deeply. He deeply agreed. If they were to deal with the Eastern Emperor and the Demon Empress directly, even the archer god would be nervous. He definitely had no confidence, but dealing with Chu Yang was different. If I kill, capture, and cripple him, would the two of you be sad? Chapter 2604. However, even if the two of you are so sad that you want to die, do you dare to admit that he is your illegitimate child? I will kill your illegitimate child first and cause you to be distracted. Then, I will deal with you two adulterers. I will avenge Her Majesty the Empress. The above was the cause of the matter. The sage, with his glib tongue, had fabricated an extremely evil fact out of thin air. He had used such a monstrous lie in exchange for the elves' alliance and assistance. The elf race had been in the elf forest for generations. Although they were powerful, their understanding of the human race was still very little. They were more or less, a little naive. Although the archer god's cultivation was unparalleled and he had enough experience, the pride and simplicity of the elf race still existed. Especially, the person who said this was the most trustworthy person in the world, the only saint. How could he not believe it? However, he believed that even in his dreams, the sage wouldn't have thought that this lie of his would unexpectedly come out with a few facts as well. Firstly, the person who had a blood contract with him was indeed Shui Leihan's biological younger brother. The sage hadn't thought of this point at all. What he did not expect even more was, these two people were actually his biological uncles. Secondly, what he did not expect even more was that Dong Huang and the Demon Empress did not have any illicit relationship at that time, but now, it seemed to have started, a little bit, just a little bit. After this shocking lie, the matter gradually developed to the current situation. When Zi Xieching found out about this, the Demon Empress and Shui Leihan also found out about this at the same time. What? I killed the missing elf empress with my own hands? Or my woman? And my child? The elf emperor's seal is in my hands. Shui Leihan was stunned on the spot. What is this? The Demon Empress was also stunned. How did that little Chu Yang become the illegitimate child of you and me? He is obviously a 100% pure descendant of the human race. How can he have any characteristics of the demon race? I also became the murderer of the elf empress. How did all these things happen? Don't these elves have brains? Didn't they do any investigation? How in the world did they fabricate such a nonsensical thing? The two kings were dumbfounded. The demon empress injuries had already healed. However, when he suddenly heard this news, he was so agitated that his old injuries almost flared up again. This matter was related to her reputation for the rest of her life. When she heard this explosive news, she was so angry that her brain almost exploded. A woman's reputation. That was the most important thing in his life. He absolutely could not tolerate any slander, not even the slightest doubt. However, this ridiculous rumor had ruined the reputation of the two most honorable women in Heaven Tower. The demon empress was really infuriated at this moment. After much deliberation, she finally vented all her anger on Shui Leihan. Tell me, you bastard, when can't you go after Shui Wuhan? Why did it have to be at that time? Tell me. Tell me. In all honesty, my pursuit of Shui Wuhan back then really had nothing to do with this. Shui Leihan's eyes widened. He felt so wronged that he couldn't say anything. How did it connect to this matter? It's not even close. How is it not close? The timing was clearly just right. Could it be that you really had an affair with the fairy empress? The demon empress suddenly frowned and became suspicious. Shui Leihan smiled bitterly. He really felt that he seemed to have suffered internal injuries. No way. Even you believe it? The demon empress snorted and said, there's no smoke without fire. Flies won't bite a seamless egg. The meaning behind this HMPH was very obvious. You've been treating me like this these days. Don't all men behave the same way as the fairy empress back then? Do you think I don't know? Shui Leihan was so wronged that he almost wanted to bang his head against the wall. He said hurriedly, Xin, it's fine if others think this way, but how can you think of me like this too? Why don't you say that this rumor even said that you and I were in cahoots? According to what you said, there's no smoke without fire, then aren't we? Shut up, get lost. Bastard. Get lost quickly. The demon empress roared angrily. Shui Leihan looked embarrassed. Say it, say it. The demon empress was so angry that her towering chest rose and fell violently. Her face was flushed red. Shui Leihan secretly glanced at the undulating mountain range. He swallowed his saliva and sat upright. Putting on the image of a righteous ruler, he said, Don't be anxious. I'll tell you the truth. That blood contract is indeed my younger brother. What? You? The demon empress was even more furious. Shui Leihan smiled bitterly. There's indeed a reason for this. Back then, that Shui Wuhan was my younger brother. The two of them became sworn brothers and roamed the martial world together. At the beginning, he was quite good and definitely not evil. However, the martial arts that Shui Wuhan initially cultivated were evil in nature. As his martial arts improved, his temperament changed greatly. Finally, in a few consecutive missions, he did things that angered the heavens and people. The demon empress nodded slowly. What angered the heavens and people? There was no need to ask about this in detail. So I took action personally to capture Shui Wuhan and kill him, Shui Leihan said. At that time, it was already too late. Because at that time, Shui Wuhan would go crazy at any time. Once he went crazy, it would be accompanied by a massacre. Once he went crazy, the whole city would die. The demon empress took a breath and said, This reason does make sense. I can agree with it. But did you disappear for a period of time after that? It was when the fairy empress finally disappeared completely. This timing is really too coincidental. How do you explain it? Shui Leihan spread out his hands, looking helpless. How do I explain it? How can I explain it? At that time, I suddenly encountered an extremely urgent matter and had to do it immediately. So I went to the lower realm. Speaking of which, is this really strange? The timing is really too coincidental. But what can I do? I just made it in time. How would I know that the fairy empress disappeared at that moment? What Shui Leihan didn't say was, at that time, right after he killed Shui Wuhan, he met that person. And from then on, the Calamity Sword really came into being. There were also legends of the Calamity Sword Masters. But such a thing. Who would believe it? Especially, those who hadn't experienced the Heaven Layer continent. He believed that even if Shui Leihan was willing to say it out loud, no one would believe him. If what the Lord had said was a huge lie that was horrifying, then the truth that Shui Leihan had said was even more unbelievable. At this point, the two of them could only smile bitterly at each other. The demon empress sister, the woman in white, had been listening at the side. At this moment, she asked carefully, in that case, can't you explain it to the fairy archer god? The most substantial evidence is what my sister said. That Chu Yang is a pure descendant of the human race and has no characteristics of the demon race at all. Isn't everything clear now? The demon empress said angrily, Bah, what is the fairy archer god? You want me to explain it to him? Bastard, he slandered my reputation. Even if he kneels down and kowtows to me, I can't forgive him. You actually want me to explain it to him? He can think whatever he wants. If he wants to fight, let's fight. If he wants to fight, let's fight. Do you think I'm afraid of a nest of fairies? Explain. Explain my ass. The woman in white stuck out her tongue and retracted her head. This matter was really difficult to handle. With the status of the demon empress and the East sovereign, why should they explain? That would be giving them too much face. Shui Leihan smiled lightly and said, better not explain. For such matters, the more you explain, the more you make it worse. The more suspicious they are. In the end, they will definitely fall out completely. The woman in white agreed. The East sovereign was still thinking far ahead. If this matter wasn't done by the two of you, with the status of the two of you, why do you need to explain? To explain was to cover up, and to cover up meant that it was true. If it was done by the two of you, it would be a futile explanation. It would just be a guilty conscience. In any case, no matter what was done or said, this shit basin had already been placed on their heads. They couldn't remove it in a short time. Besides, your sister and I are also in love. Shui Leihan stroked his beard and smiled. The more you explain, the more it makes it worse. At this moment, Shui Leihan was actually a little proud. This matter had made their relationship clear. Originally, the demon empress was still hesitating, but now it was directly exposed in broad daylight. It was even more wonderful. Even if the demon empress wasn't together with him, in the eyes of the world, she was still together with him. That made them even more together. Thinking of this, Shui Leihan almost looked up to the sky and howled, almost tearing up. This was really good news that fell from the sky, a good thing that couldn't be asked for, just because of a rumor. He. Shui Leihan even felt a little grateful to the elves. How sensible. This bunch of elves. Unfortunately, Shui Leihan only saw what was in front of him. He didn't expect that because of a moment of emotion, it would cause a series of subsequent changes. It was really unexpected and had far-reaching effects. However, the woman in white was so shocked by Shui Leihan's words that her whole body shook. Her eyes widened and her mouth dropped open. Her finger trembled as she pointed at the two of them, looking as if she had seen a ghost. You guys. Really? Oh my God. I'm going to die. I must be dreaming. Suddenly, she realized. Could it be? Chu Yang is really your illegitimate son? The demon empress and the East sovereign looked at her with black lines on their faces. They were so conflicted that they couldn't say anything. What kind of person was this? Just now, you said that Chu Yang was obviously a pure human. How did he become our illegitimate son? Could it be that I guessed correctly? Chu Yang is really your son, just that he completely concealed the characteristics of the demon race. The woman in white felt that she was extremely shocked. Her whole body was shaking and she was almost out of her wits. She was completely out of her mind and was completely in a mess. Was this a super imagination? You little girl. The East sovereign and the demon empress gritted their teeth and glared at her. You guessed correctly. The demon empress was immediately furious. Who's in love with you? Shui Leihan, you. You're too shameless. Today is the birthday of the beautiful Jin loves Zun Zun. Let us wish her a happy birthday. He. She's really a great beauty. I've seen her before. Turning around to look, his wife wasn't behind him. So he continued, I've really seen the photos. Wish. Jinna loves Zun Zun. Happy birthday. More and more beautiful. Happy every day. Everyone, let's shout together. Chapter 2605. Shui Leihan raised his hands in surrender. I was wrong, okay. Looking at his lethargic look, the demon empress was even more furious. The beautiful lady in white stared at the two of them, dumbfounded. She finally stood up and walked out unsteadily. "I'll go out and calm down. I won't disturb your flirting," the demon empress hurriedly explained. "Come back, who's flirting with him?" Ah! Only then did she realize that her sister had already left without a trace. Shui Leihan held his stomach and laughed. "We were flirting in the first place. Shin just admit it." The demon empress was furious. Her face flushed red and she suddenly went berserk. Shui Leihan laughed but didn't fight back. He held his head and let her beat him. The laughter was endless. After a long time, the two of them calmed down. The demon empress said, "Since we can't explain it clearly, then the battle with the fairy race is inevitable." Shui Leihan's brows were also tightly knitted. Now it seems that this battle is really unavoidable. The demon empress heaved a long sigh. When it came to practical problems, even if the two of them were kings, they were still full of worry. Allies had turned into enemies. Not to mention the question of who would win and who would lose, just this battle alone would definitely cause both sides to suffer heavy losses. News came from Zi Xiao's Heavenly Tribulation Brothers. As the heavenly demon army attacked day and night, the layer of fog barrier that was originally abnormally thick had become thinner and thinner. It was about to be broken through. The heavenly demon war was imminent. Such a loss at such a crucial moment was really unbearable. But they really couldn't think of any solution. Although the demon empress and Shui Leihan's attitude in front of others was unusually tough, in fact, they didn't have any feasible solution at all. For the time being, they could only let it be and observe the subsequent development of the situation. Although the two of them spoke ruthlessly, if this battle really affected the battle of the extraterrestrial demons, neither of them would forgive themselves. Therefore, this matter had actually formed an almost irresolvable knot here. And on the other side, the fairy race tried to dissuade them, but now they had a common enemy and no longer had any scruples. After the saint left, the arrow god gathered the fairy race's managing elders to discuss how to deal with this matter. Various inferences and arguments. From the various events that happened at that time, one by one, they actually found that what the saint said was actually more than 10%. In other words, the fairy emperor's seal, the lost sacred artifact of our race, is most likely in the hands of Donghuang Shui Leihan. Whether it was for public or private reasons, it was impossible for the elves to be kind to Donghuang. In the heavenly imperial court, only the strong were respected. Kindness must be avenged, and hatred must be repaid. 1% confidence could be used as a reason. 3% confidence. It was almost certain that they could start a war. With a 70% chance of success, they could fight to the death. What's more, this matter actually had the possibility of success. It was practically a done deal. This was the most important point. This matter was related to the lost fairy emperor's seal. Not to mention the possibility of success, even if there was only a 10% chance, or even less chance, the fairy tribe would definitely not let go of it. Under the arguments of various parties, everyone slowly went from half-believing and half-doubting to firmly believing without a doubt. The crowd was surging with emotions, and in the end, their blood was boiling and they could no longer endure it. Therefore, it was just a summons. A great battle immediately broke out. Destroy the heavenly armament pavilion first. This was the established policy, as well as the first strategic step. There was no other reason. This Chu Yang was actually the illegitimate son of Donghuang Shui Leihan and the demon empress Yarou Xin Mph. This was simply a good tool to torture the enemy, and it might even be the best tool to exchange for the fairy emperor's seal. Since there was such a convenient condition in front of them, how could they not make good use of it? If they didn't let this adulterous couple feel heart-wrenching pain, how could they take revenge for the fairy empress in the underworld? Vent their anger. Speed was crucial in war. That night, the fairy tribe's attack on the heavenly armament pavilion suddenly intensified. Zi Xieching was flustered and almost couldn't handle it. Especially when the fairy tribe sent out hundreds of high-level Dark Knight archers at once. Among them, there were even the fairy archer god's 10 direct disciples. The lethality of these people was really unprecedentedly terrifying. If it weren't for the fact that the divine spirit of calamity and the others were exhausted from running back and forth, this night alone would have caused extremely serious consequences. And at the crucial moment, the demon imperial palace's 7 star guards led their troops to help. Both parties were entangled in a fierce battle. It was just a night of harassment, but it made the heavenly armament pavilion feel, fighting with the fairy tribe in such a dense forest was really impossible to guard against. It was really too terrifying. The next day, Xi Xiecheng gave the order to set fire to the mountain regardless of her physical fatigue. At her command, the fire continued to rise into the sky. Several sages used their own cultivation to forcibly ignite the fire. The fire spread for a full 3,000 miles overnight. All the mountains within a radius of 3,000 miles had been turned into scorched earth. Luohua City, which had been surrounded by flowers for millions of years, suddenly became a building surrounded by scorched earth. This shocking change left everyone dumbfounded. Besides being shocked by Xi Xiecheng's decisiveness and ruthlessness, they were also worried about their future. Of course, they didn't know that Xi Xiecheng dared to do this because Chu Yang had the spring of life. When the crisis was over, this place would still be full of flowers and fragrance all year round. The fairy tribe was even more unprepared for this change. The reason why they could launch an attack almost without a trace was that they relied on the cover of flowers and trees to hide. In the special environment of Luohua City, they were like fish in water. They could almost attack the enemy from anywhere. However, these flowers and trees disappeared in such a short time, which made them feel very uncomfortable. Many fairy tribe members were so sad that they cried out loud when they saw the originally lush mountains and colorful trees turn into flames in a short time. This had nothing to do with the psychological quality of the fairy tribe. It was just that the fairy tribe was naturally close to plants. It was inevitable that they would feel sad when so many plants disappeared in front of them. Facing this situation, the god of archery had no choice but to give the order to retreat 3,000 miles. Station. This retreat had to be done. The fairy tribe was a race that couldn't live without plants. Once they left the plants, the cultivation of the fairy tribe experts would be greatly affected. Although this situation wouldn't be fully revealed in a short time, it would be fatal in a long time. But because of this, the god of archery became more and more afraid of the heavenly armament pavilion. The illegitimate son of the East Emperor and the Demon Empress was already so powerful. What about the fairy tribe himself? After 3 days of fighting, the fairy tribe left no less than tens of thousands of corpses, while the heavenly armament pavilion also suffered tens of thousands of casualty. Although everyone was well trained and every troop was made up of elites, this was the first time they faced a legendary race like the fairy tribe. They really suffered a great loss. Xi Xiecheng gritted her teeth and ordered the divine spirit of calamity and Brother Tiger to lead 200 of 300 experts with cultivation above the beginner stage of the Sage Realm. They were divided into 10 small teams and started the counter-assassination. Obviously, if you kill one of me, I'll kill 10 of you. If you hurt one of me, I'll kill 10 of you. Xi Xiecheng didn't care about such an extreme decision. Fairy tribe. Now you know about internal strife. During the battle of the purple cloud heavens, where were you when my father was at the end of the road and had no soldiers left? When the purple cloud heavens fell, where were you? When billions of people were massacred, where were you? Now, we are wholeheartedly fighting the extraterrestrial demons and pacifying the demons, but you are here to cause internal strife. Why should we kill you? The Demon Empress and Xue Leihan might have some misgivings about killing the fairy tribe, but Xi Xiecheng didn't have any psychological pressure at all. This night, it could be said to be an extremely bloody night. Xi Xiecheng oversaw the heavenly armament pavilion. She was dressed in snow-white clothes and held a book in her hands, seemingly reading it with relish. But if one looked closely, one would know that her eyes didn't seem to be focused at all. Chu Yang and the rest have already left the headquarters for more than a year. Why haven't they returned? Recently, I heard that they challenged the Holy Emperor Palace and rushed to the Western Paradise with great fanfare to assist Gu Duxing there. Xi Xiecheng was distraught. Such turmoil and chaos, all kinds of things come one after another. The Holy Emperor Palace has tens of thousands of experts and a deep foundation. The 5 great kings of the fairy tribe are all hidden and unfathomable. Can I handle it? Will something happen in the end? If Chu Yang knows about the news here, will he rush over immediately? Will the chaos here disrupt his original plan? All kinds of complicated thoughts made Zi Sheqing's heart in a mess. In fact, she was already sure that once Chu Yang knew about the news here, he would definitely rush back at full speed. But at this moment, under such circumstances, if Chu Yang rashly returned, he would inevitably face an extremely arduous battle, because he would have to face the fairy tribe's highest cultivation, the fairy archer god, and even the legendary number 1 assassin of Tian Qiu. Facing these almost traceless top-notch assassins of Tian Qiu, she believed that no one would dare to say that their lives were not in danger. Could Chu Yang do it? He who had created many legends, could he create another legend? In any case, Zi Sheqing wasn't optimistic about this. Absolutely not. Facing such a powerful enemy, Zi Sheqing only had one thought. It would be best if she could clench her teeth and endure this matter. After Chu Yang came back, there would only be a smooth journey without any surprises or dangers. Pavilion Master. Meng Wuya walked in. I have a premonition. Oh. Zi Sheqing raised her head. Although the fairy tribe is pressuring the border, the expected situation of the all-out decisive battle hasn't broken out as expected. The most important point is that the fairy tribe's top experts haven't come out to battle at the moment. Judging from the situation, they seem to be waiting for something. Meng Wuya said cautiously. Chapter 2606. Zi Sheqing sighed. They should be waiting for Chu Yang to come back. After all, everything started from that rumor. I really don't know. How did they believe the rumor that Chu Yang is the illegitimate son of the Demon Empress and the Eastern Emperor? Sigh. It's really incomprehensible, unreasonable and ridiculous. Meng Wuya smiled bitterly. In my opinion, the person who went to sow discord is really powerful. He can actually convince the elves to believe such a ridiculous thing. He's really impressive. Other than the saint, there's probably no one else in the world who can sow discord like this. Only he has enough reason and status to make the elves believe him. He's really capable of doing what others can't. Zi Sheqing sneered. Now, we can only deal with it by sticking to the status quo. But this method is really too passive. Meng Wuya's voice was heavy. There's nothing we can do about it. Zi Sheqing said, no matter how the enemy disturbs us, when it's time for us to train, we'll still train. When the enemy really comes, we'll start the war. After all, the ultimate enemy we have to deal with is still the extraterrestrial demons. We can't lose our footing just because of the unexpected intrusion of these elves. Meng Wuya was finally completely relieved. Yes. Everything has to be done for the sake of the imperial court. Zi Sheqing stood up with her hands behind her back. She said lightly, the elves can be childish, but we can't be brainless like them. Yes. Meng Wuya walked out briskly. He was worried that Zi Sheqing would be impulsive. So he came to sound her out. Now that he heard Zi Sheqing's answer, he was finally completely relieved. Shadow. A bow that was already drawn to the fullest. The arrow was on the string. It was about to be released. However, this strange bow was slowly retracting. The god of archery, who was hiding, was deep in thought. He looked at Zi Sheqing with a complicated expression. He came here today to carry out the plan. He wanted to kill Zi Sheqing with an arrow. He wanted to kill the executioner behind the scenes who had killed too many elven warriors. Zi Sheqing, who's in charge of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion now, is Chu Yang's woman. As long as he killed her, to the entire Heavenly Armament Pavilion, to Chu Yang and even to the Demon Empress. It would be an extremely heavy blow. These were the words of the saint. Therefore, the archer god decided to act personally. He had indeed come, and had successfully infiltrated. Furthermore, he had come all the way here and was about to make his move, yet no one had discovered him. His body was perfectly hidden in the void. In such a state, as long as he shot that stunning arrow, he believed that Zi Sheqing would not have any chance of escaping. But when he arrived here, he coincidentally heard Zi Sheching's words. The archer god started to hesitate. This was a person who truly planned for Tian Qiu, who truly wanted to fight against the extraterrestrial demons. Although the elves were scolded for being childish, the archer god was unable to get angry at this moment. In his heart, he suddenly had doubts about his own actions. For revenge, was it really right to shoot and kill such a person who truly maintained the stability of Heaven Imperial Palace and created a smooth future for Heaven Imperial Palace, and this person was an innocent person? But, should he not take revenge for the Empress? The god of archery's expression changed. Looking at Zi Sheching, who was busy, he could not make up his mind. After a long time, finally, he sighed and narked the arrow again. But it was not because of his selfishness. Because this time, the target was not Zi Sheching. At least, it was not Zi Sheching herself. Zi Sheching was frowning and pacing back and forth, thinking hard about how to solve the terrible situation in front of her. But at that moment, she suddenly felt an indescribable chill. She raised her head. An arrow was already in front of her. There were no words to describe the speed of this arrow. Even the cold light could not be seen. Only a space vortex appeared behind the arrow. Even a top expert like Zi Sheching, who had reached the peak of the saint level, could not react in time. She could only tilt her head subconsciously. Whoosh! That arrow brushed past Zi Sheching's ear and cut off a strand of her hair. It was just a strand of hair. Then, the arrow strangely stopped in its tracks. It stopped in mid-air, and the strand of hair that was cut off was attached to the arrow after it was cut off. The top half was attached to the arrow, as if it was broken, but also as if it was not broken. And this arrow actually connected the strand of hair that was cut off. This arrow that did not hurt Zi Sheching, actually had a target. Its target was that strand of hair. The arrow was so fast that it could not be described with words. After cutting off a strand of hair at such an indescribable speed, it came to a stop at its highest speed. And then it created such a strange situation. What kind of archery skill was this? As the person involved, Zi Sheching's face turned pale. Her eyes fixed on the arrow that was still floating beside her ear. Her whole body was instantly covered in cold sweat. Zi Sheching had always been bold. In terms of courage, even Chu Yang would have to admit that he was not as bold as her. But at this moment, she was really shocked and scared. But she knew clearly that the other party did not really have the intention to kill her. Otherwise, she was afraid that she would have become a corpse by now. Even her corpse would not be left. She would have completely disappeared and her spirit would be destroyed. How could a person who could shoot such a godly arrow not have some tricks up his sleeve? She slowly stretched out her hand and held the arrow. She only felt a strong force coming from the arrow. Her whole body trembled as if she had been electrocuted. Then, she really held the arrow in her hand. It turned out that besides the godly speed of the arrow, there was still a strong force. What a terrifying arrow, what a shocking arrow. In mid-air, the god of archery was also looking at the arrow. He held a green longbow in his hand, which was shining brightly. Finally, he sighed softly. His body flashed and disappeared inexplicably. As the saying went, one thought to live, one thought to die, and one thought to rise. One thought to decline. The god of archery of the elves decided the future of the elves. If he really shot Zi Sheching today, there would be no end to the elves' relationship with him. There was no room for negotiation between Chu Yang and the elf clan. No matter what position, reason, misunderstanding, or relationship existed between Chu Yang and the elf clan, Chu Yang would destroy the elf clan at all costs and regardless of the consequence. Fortunately, that stunning arrow, the fatal arrow, was not shot out. This arrow was shot after the god of archery knew the truth. He felt that this was the proudest thing in his life. Because, with this fatal arrow, the elves would definitely be annihilated. This arrow was not overdone, but in exchange, the elves would prosper forever. Zi Sheching, who was filled with fear, took a deep breath. Suddenly, a name flashed across her mind. She blurted out, "Elves, god of archery." She herself did not know that when she said these words, her body suddenly turned into a dense white light. This white light floated, filled with a peaceful aura, as if it was joyful, encouraging, or as if it was because she saw an old friend that she had not seen for a long time. The white light was like a pair of light wings, flashing on both sides of Zhi Xiqing's body. It was just that the white light existed for an extremely short period of time. After a while, it disappeared in a flash. Zhi Xiqing, who was filled with fear, looked lost for a moment. She muttered, "Who will accompany me?" "Qiong Xiao. Dancing with wind and cloud. Who will accompany me? World. Heaven." Then, Zhi Xiqing, who came back to her senses, could not help but be stunned. The words that she casually said just now had been imprinted in her heart. She would never forget it again. But why would she say such a sentence? But why would it be imprinted in her heart? What exactly was the meaning of this sentence? If you don't understand, you can go back and look at the 7th chapter, chapter 893. The god of archery had already disappeared. What was truly a pity was that if he had stayed a little longer after the arrow was released, he would have been able to escape. He would definitely have seen the strange white light that emerged from Zhi Xiqing's body. The wings of the white light. If so, all the misunderstandings would have been cleared up in an instant. After that, many unforeseen events that should not have happened would also not have happened. But he just had to leave right before that moment. At this moment, he had already gone more than 1,000 miles away. Finally, he did not see that scene. Life was full of ups and downs. An instant of change could change the overall situation of the world. An instant of difference could have far-reaching effects. The arrow that was no longer breathtaking just now had preserved the vitality of the elf race and the future of the elf race. But this instant of difference still left behind a catastrophe for the elf race. The god of archery, who was already 1,000 miles away, suddenly stopped. There were very few things in the world that could shake the heart of this legend of the elf race. But at this moment, he clearly felt that the divine sense that was attached to the arrow just now was overflowing with heartfelt joy. This made the god of archery's heart, which had not been moved for a long time, rippled at this moment. Then, he heard the mysterious words that came from Zhi Xiqing's mouth. "Who will accompany me? Qiong Xiao. Wind and cloud dance. Who will accompany me? World. Heaven." The god of archery's body stiffened. "Qiong Xiao. Wind and cloud dance." Back then, Her Majesty was called Wu Qiong Xiao. He watched her grow up bit by bit, brought her up single-handedly. It was really like raising his own daughter. Watching her grow up bit by bit, every time she grew up a little, that kind of infinite satisfaction in his heart, that kind of happiness, was really indescribable. Such a little thing, since she was young, he had personally taught her martial arts, taught her mantras, and cultivated the secret techniques of the elf race. With her outstanding talent and the bloodline of the elf royal family, she had grown up to become the noblest and most powerful elf queen of the elf race in just a few 100,000 years. Just when he was extremely gratified and retired to the mountains, she suddenly disappeared. All these years, the god of archery's heart was in pain all the time, just like a father who suddenly lost his little daughter that he loved more than his own life. Chapter 2608. Qiong Xiao. The god of archery felt a bitter pain in his heart. He muttered, Who killed you? Who is it? Who killed my Qiong Xiao?" At this moment, the god of archery felt an inexplicable bitterness in his heart, as if it was about to split apart. The desire to protect that had accumulated in the depths of his heart all these years completely erupted at this moment. At this moment, his heart felt so sore that it was about to shatter into pieces. Then, it was a towering rage. It could no longer be contained. The god of archery suddenly roared into the sky, screaming hysterically, "Xue Leihan, you bastard, come out. Come out and fight with me." The roar rose into the sky, thousands of miles in the sky, and the 8,000 rivers and mountains under the ground trembled at the same time. Between heaven and earth, murderous aura filled the air, suddenly turning into a raging wind, and the world was miserable. The god of archery stood steadily in the air, his clothes fluttering crazily in the wind. His gaze was as sharp as lightning, piercing through the sky in front of him for thousands of miles. Then, he suddenly turned around and narked an arrow on his bow, in the direction of the demon palace. With a heart full of grief, bitterness, and heartache, he shot an arrow that shocked the heavens, an arrow that shocked the heavens. At this moment, the arrow light was like the sharpest lightning formed in the air, but without any preparation process, it had already exploded. The most extreme explosion. There was a burst of mist, the void shattered, and starlight flickered chaotically. It was as if the entire universe had exploded at this moment. Cheung Xiao, no matter what, I will definitely avenge you. The god of archery's eyes were deep as he looked at the void. He muttered to himself. His heart felt like it was being torn apart again. It was as if he saw that gentle and cute girl in snow-white clothes again. She was right beside him, hugging his arm and acting coquettishly. I'm not practicing today. I want to go out and play. Can you pick fruits for me to eat? Okay. The god of archery's eyes became confused, and he muttered to himself with infinite kindness, Little Cheung Xiao, if you don't practice, let's go out and play. Let's go eat fruits, I'll listen to you. The raging wind in the sky was still raging. The wind swept away the clouds, and the gods and ghosts cried. The god of archery stood alone in the clouds in the sky, without moving. His clothes fluttered in the wind. Demon Palace. Xue Leihan was currently discussing countermeasures with the Demon Empress. Because in the past few days, the actions of the elves were too extreme, and the scale was getting bigger and bigger. The unavoidable atmosphere of the final battle was already evident. However, Zi Sheqing was similarly unafraid of battle and didn't avoid it. She even had the will to fight without hesitation. The decisive battle between both parties was unavoidable. However, as the main party involved, the Eastern Emperor Demon Empress truly didn't wish for such an extreme situation to occur. Hence, they discussed possible countermeasures to resolve this calamity. Speaking of which, he wanted to resolve this calamity. It wasn't that difficult, as long as he could expose the sage's lies. As long as he exposed that absurd lie, not only would he be able to resolve the misunderstanding, but he would also have a great chance of obtaining the elves' help in dealing with the upcoming demonic calamity. Fabricating a lie might require a lot of thought and consideration, but it was not so troublesome to expose a lie. As long as one could find any flaw in the lie, one could make all the lies untrustworthy. Take the current situation as an example. The sage said that the fairy empress was caught because she saw through the affair of the Eastern Emperor Demon Empress. He also said that the fairy empress was pregnant with Xue Leihan's flesh and blood. These were all speculations, and although they weren't enough evidence, they were hard to refute. Coincidentally, Meng Qi was Xue Leihan's brother through a blood contract. This point was also irrefutable. However, there was a section that emphasized the fact that Chu Yang was the illegitimate son of the Eastern Sovereign and the Demon Empress. This point was a huge flaw. Chu Yang was a purebred human, and definitely not a hybrid between the human race and the demon race. Just this point alone was enough to completely expose the saint's lie. Actually, with the sage's wisdom, the big lie that he painstakingly fabricated shouldn't have such a flaw. However, the sage was used to reading people's minds. When Chu Yang first entered the imperial court, he entered the secular world from the Eastern Emperor heaven. When he entered the secular world, he was only a small heaven level. Later on, there were many unforeseen events, and his cultivation broke through consecutively. Especially in the battle against the Yuanmo Road, Chu Yang didn't hesitate to kill the enemy. He had already stepped on the road to the netherworld, but he was rescued by Xue Leihan. This was originally a secret, but it was found out by the sage after careful investigation. At that time, Yuan Tianji's identity as the heavenly demon wasn't exposed, and Xue Leihan was still willing to save him. If there wasn't such a huge relationship, how could it be possible? Later on, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's influence swept the entire imperial court. Only the Eastern Emperor Heaven had no trace of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. What did this mean? And as the base of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion in the Demon Emperor Heaven, The demon empress Jiao Ningning was willing to be a concubine and flattered big brother Chu Yang blindly. What did this mean? Such facts all proved one thing. Chu Yang's position in the heart of the Eastern Emperor Demon Empress was special. He might be even more important than her biological son. What could be more important than her biological son? It seemed that it could only be an illegitimate son. Therefore, the sage was sure that Chu Yang was the illegitimate son of the Eastern Emperor and the Demon Empress. This was something that the sage himself was sure of. As for the fact that Chu Yang didn't have the characteristics of the demon race, it was too easy to explain. There were many treasures in the world, and it wasn't easy to find something that could cover up certain characteristics. The sage himself could casually make 3 to 7 of them. Therefore, the sage was very certain that Chu Yang was the illegitimate son of the Eastern Emperor Demon Empress. He believed that the degree of credibility was even higher than the ridiculous speculation that the blood contract was the Eastern Emperor's brother. Therefore, there were really too many things in this world that one couldn't think of. The Demon Empress and the Eastern Emperor knew that Chu Yang didn't have the slightest bit of blood relationship with them. Therefore, asking Chu Yang to come out and explain this scam was the best strategy to deal with the current situation. However, Chu Yang's whereabouts were unknown, and they didn't know when he would return. This was instead the biggest problem. Therefore, Xue Leihan and the Demon Empress discussed whether they should spread out their manpower to find Chu Yang as soon as possible, so as to prevent any undue delay from causing an irreversible bad situation. However, at this moment, the two of them heard that long howl at the same time. It's the elf race's god of archery. Even with the Demon Empress' composure, her expression couldn't help but change. Then, they heard that heart-wrenching yell, Xue Leihan, come out. Fight with me. Hearing that, Xue Leihan's face sank. His displeasure was evident in his words. The entanglement in the Eastern Emperor's heart at this moment was really indescribable. Oh heavens, oh earth, this clearly has nothing to do with me. But now, how did it develop to such an extent? From this long howl, it was completely obvious that the elf god of archery had obviously been agitated by grief to the point that he had lost his rationality. To such a person, no matter how strong the explanation was, it was all useless. Xue Leihan was already very, very angry. If it wasn't for the fact that he was worried about the impending battle with the extraterrestrial demons, he would have already rushed out at this moment. I'm the great Eastern Emperor. How can I be an ordinary person who can be mentioned by your mouth like this? How dare you challenge me like this? It'd be strange if I don't let you know why the flowers are so red. Just as Xue Leihan was filled with depression and had nowhere to vent it, another unforeseen event occurred. An ominous sign had arrived. The Eastern Emperor and the Demon Empress expressions changed at the same time. They attacked at the same time. A ray of light flashed. An arrow that was extremely fast pierced through the air and arrived. Wherever the arrow passed, the ceiling of the demon palace suddenly exploded with a loud bang. This sudden and shocking arrow, as if it had a life of its own, brought along a sky full of thunderbolts as it poured down crazily. Boom! The Demon Empress and Xue Leihan both attacked at the same time to intercept the arrow. Their bodies actually shook. That arrow had already been completely crushed by their hands and turned into fine powder, no longer existing in this world. However, that arrow had still destroyed the Demon Imperial Palace. Destroying the Demon Palace with one arrow. This was the strength of the elven archer god. But it was the same arrow that provoked 2 great kings at the same time. 2 of the most powerful experts in the world. Looking at the fine powder in his palm, Xue Leihan's gaze became even colder. His expression was equally cold, as if his entire person was frozen. The coldness was so cold that it seemed to be able to freeze everything and seal the world in ice. Anything could be tolerated for the sake of the big picture. But this time, he could no longer tolerate it. Elven archer god, you've gone too far. Then, a cold murderous aura erupted from his body and shot straight into the sky. Calm down, don't be rash. The Demon Empress didn't finish her sentence. Xue Leihan had already leaped up and instantly soared into the sky. Then, his voice could be heard from high up in the sky, with a strong sense of anger. Archer God. I'm coming. This is bad. The demon empress complained in her heart. Although the situation was bad, there was still room for control. In fact, just now, the two of them had already decided to find Chu Yang as soon as possible and expose the saint's deception to completely end this huge lie. However, the arrow of the god of archery had truly pushed the situation to the point where it could no longer be salvaged. The moment Xue Leihan rushed out in a rage, the situation had completely gone out of control. The demon empress was very anxious. She leaped out and followed closely behind him. Maybe she could still salvage this dangerous situation. The demon empress still held on to the last bit of luck. The archer god's clothes were as white as snow. He stood proudly in the sky. His gaze was cold and sharp like an arrow as he stared in the direction of the demon palace. The expression on his face was like a 10,000-year-old ice, eternally unmoving, eternally unchanging. The wind was still howling. There were no clouds at all, but suddenly, the wind and clouds gathered again in mid-air. Countless clouds madly rushed over from all directions. Even though there was a raging gale that swept the clouds away, the clouds that filled the sky continued to advance, one after the other, without end. When the Eastern Emperor moved, the world was shocked. In the land of thunder and lightning, the lord of the Eastern royal sky, Donghuang Xue Leihan, flew over from afar. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of the archer god, standing with his hands behind his back. With the same cold gaze, he looked at the archer god in front of him. The aura of a ruler that swept through the world, the aura of a ruler that controlled the universe, filled the universe and filled the world. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.